going to kick this off by saying welcome, TV historians, to a video audio celebration of Shari Lewis, courtesy of her daughters, Mallory Lewis and Lambchop. Listeners, I was contacted just a couple months ago by University of Kentucky Press, and lo and behold, they were getting close to publishing Mallory's. I have my copy somewhere. Oh, here it is. Here it is right here. Shari Lewis. Ooh, my lighting. Shari Lewis and Lambchop, the team that changed children's television. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the book, but I don't want Mallory to share too much because the whole purpose is to go buy the book, because then you really have it. And you can pass it down and pass it around, but you can also buy it as gifts. And we're going to talk about how to get the book later in the episode. But first, we just have a whole lot of Shari Lewis to talk about. And I'm thrilled to be able to talk to Mallory, because it was 5 years ago that Dwight Hurst and I were talking about children's television and Shari's role, her impact, her legacy. And that was for, two armchair quarterbacks and huge fans doing it from that seat. And here we're going to have an insider's look and an insider's perspective. So I am grateful that you're here today, Mallory. And
I am thrilled to be here today. I love the podcast, and I think this is going to be such fun.
We can put Shari Lewis in the context of the Fred Rogerses of the world, the Sesame Street, even Barney. We don't
ever put mom in the context of Barney.
Well, for those of us who are in the consumer end, once Shari passed, and that's part of this whole conversation, Barney was not a bad thing. And of course, my kids were too old for Teletubbies by the time that those rolled in. So we will talk about the quality of children's programming, and because that really was near and dear to Shari's heart. So Mallory, there you were, it had been a decade, 2 decades almost since your mother had passed. And what is it that prompted you to begin writing this book and researching?
I think more to the point, why did I not think of this sooner? Because my co-author, Nat Segaloff, he's a award-winning biographer. He's a friend of mom's. He was a friend of mine. And it was one day over dinner. And this was not the first dinner we'd had since mom passed. One day over dinner, I said, we should really do a book on mom. And he goes, yeah. And we both looked at each other like, what kind of schmucks are we that we didn't think of this 20 years ago? So I think it was actually RBG's documentary that what spurred me. We also have a documentary deal, and we're in post-production on the documentary on mom. So I think that we owe this book to RBG. We owe so much to RBG.
Mm-hmm. We do. And the women who are out there doing documentaries, including Julie Cohen, and they're doing a Gabrielle Giffords, and then there's a Rosa Parks one. So we are fortunate that some of this biography is finally coming to the surface, because it's really important and it has been so overlooked. You know
the saying, history is told by the victors. Well, unfortunately, the victors have all been men. When mom was first working, she was making 10 times what my father was working when they met. He had to sign for her credit card. I mean, so, and obviously that's gotten better, but I think, as we all know, with the Dobbs decision, women are not, we have not moved forward, which is why, we can only hope that the midterms get a little better. Mom would have been horrified, because she was much more like Lucille Ball than she was like Fred Rogers. She was a woman in the late 50s who had her own production company. There were 2 of them. They both had red hair, Mom and Lucille Ball. And her struggle, what this book is about, and the reason I wrote this book, or really I talked this book, Nat wrote this book, to give credit where credit is due. But the reason I felt it was important to do it is because people have an opinion about who my mom was. They have a vision about who my mom was. She was a nice little lady who played with puppets. Well, sometimes she was also a dancer. She was a conductor. She was an activist. She was a philanthropist. She was a wife. She was a mother. She was a 3-dimensional human being. And
Mhm.
I think we do celebrities a huge disservice when we go, oh, he's just a hot guy, or although I appreciate the hot guys, or, she's just I mean, I do not watch the Kardashians, but I have a huge amount of respect for what they have achieved.
Yeah.
You don't get to be that successful for that long by being stupid. And whether I place value on what they are selling, that has nothing to do with it. Good on them. And their skims aren't bad. So, but I think that women in particular get pigeonholed by our society. Oh, they're hot, or they're slutty. Let's slut shame, or they're a nice little lady who plays with puppets, not understanding that you cannot survive in this business. You cannot survive in any business without being focused, without being smart, without being good at what you do.
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about your mother's business acumen in a little bit, because it's actually quite complicated. It not only is that she was a woman in the business world, but in a business world that was spanned numerous decades, and licensing and copyright and all of the muck that the lawyers bring to the table, which was part of her legacy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mom used to say, if you are going to have a long career, you're going to have to get used to going out of fashion a lot. And simply, there's a joke in our family, the women in our family don't hear the letter N. So when people say no, all we hear is, oh.
I like that. That's a good one. So you mentioned briefly that there's a documentary in post-production. And then also I'd like to just talk a little bit about the A&E biography episode that really was your co-writer Nat's
Nat
baby,
directed that. Yeah. And
so
you can watch that on YouTube.
You can.
Yeah, the quality's not great.
Okay.
It's a pirated situation, but
Mm-hmm.
or you could just wait for the documentary to come out.
And so what's that entitled? Because we'll be kind of tracking
that is
that
called Shari and Lambchop.
All right. Very good. And you're
We're
expecting that?
it. Lambchop thinks it should be Lambchop and Shari, but
Well,
she's like that.
And when do you expect that to be
That is an
available?
awesome question. I don't have an answer yet. Hopefully by the spring, maybe the summer.
All right. Very good. Well, so listeners, stay tuned for continued, follow us, follow Mallory on Twitter. We're going to talk about those handles and everything, but you're going to be hearing more about Shari Lewis, I hope, because we deserve to really honor her in the way that life happened very quickly in the mid 90s. And there was so much going on, and everybody thought that women were going to continue to make strides. And I think the more we reflect on Shari's good work and her legacy, the more we are all inspired to say we've got more in us, and we've certainly have more fight in us. And that A&E biography episode, all of those biography episodes were so well done. That really is the foundation of what otherwise is very scant research. When Dwight and I were working on the podcast 5 years ago, it was hard to find information about your mother. So
yeah, I had all of the tapes. So the documentary is going to have footage that hasn't been seen in 40 years, 50 years. And since I don't know when that's coming out, the best place to start is with Shari Lewis and Lambchop, the team that changed children's television.
Exactly. So you have this unique vantage point. You were her daughter. You were a collaborator. You worked with her in the latter stages, probably the shows that my kids watched.
Yep.
Of all of the awards and recognitions, the Emmys and the Peabody and the Parents' Choice, were there any awards that really struck her as being the most meaningful?
Yes, I think in the early days, the Peabody did.
The 1960? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think she and I have the only mother-daughter Emmy for writing in a children's series, as it turns out. So I know that one meant a great deal to her, and it certainly meant a great deal to me. And I think the thing that she enjoyed She also liked her honorary doctorate from Hofstra University, because what Jewish girl doesn't want to be a doctor? but I think the act that the thing that she did that probably meant the most, other than having me, is when she testified in front of the House subcommittee on behalf of children and on behalf of children's television. I think that was a great moment for her. You were given 3 minutes to testify. And at the end of her 3 minutes, Lambchop popped up and asked if she could have her own 3 minutes. And Ed Markey said, of course, Lambchop. So I know that meant a lot to Mom.
And that was a time, Washington was a different place 30 years ago when she was doing this. And broadcasting and the whole world of children's television was very different. But so listeners, every once in a while, like, I mean, it would be cool to do Shari's testimony, you know, we can grab the audio, and I kind of dug around to see if I could find the audio, but I did pull down the transcript that is available through the government website. Just Google Shari Lewis congressional testimony. And so here are some of the extra excerpts, and I will, Mallory and I have not reviewed this, you know, we have not coordinated or practiced it or anything. I'm just going to read some excerpts. And if you've got some things to say, Mallory, that kind of help frame the context, because again, understanding that in 1960s, she won a Peabody Award. Shari won a Peabody Award for being, at that time, the children's television of the baby boom, the core of the baby boom. And now in 1993, when she's testifying March on Capitol Hill, it's really to try to save children's programming from going crazy.
What had happened was, of course, Mom sold merchandise because the kids liked the television show, but the toy companies started creating television shows to sell toys, which is different. The Power Rangers had zero value except as an engine to drive toy sales. Mom used to say that we have to do better by our children because they are our only known source of adults. And Mom never talked down to kids. In her life, she never said, and now boys and girls. The storylines were about real life situations. They were little morality plays. She felt that you show it, you do it, and then you can teach it. That it is really important for kids. She never said the main difference between her and Mr. Rogers, other than breasts, was that Mom never said to kids, you're fine the way you are. Now, she didn't mean you're not fine because you have the color skin or a color hair or a body image. What she meant was, what she said was, you can do it. You can be better. I encourage you to try hard. I encourage you to learn. She did 101 things for kids to do, 101, these are books, 101 magic tricks, 101 ways for kids to really make money. She, and none of them involved having a YouTube channel playing video games. but had that existed, she would have included that. But Mom really wanted kids to stretch themselves, to believe in themselves, and not just because somebody said, you're perfect the way you are. You don't believe in yourself if someone tells you you can do something. You believe in yourself when you have done something.
And that is a testament to her being a member of the greatest generation, a child of the Depression, and self-made. I mean, that was the American dream.
But I think it is less a member. She never, I don't think, felt locked into her generation. And I don't think the Depression really touched her because both of my grandparents were teachers. So although they weren't wealthy, there was always food on the table, always, and lessons, plenty of money for music lessons. I think what it was Mom was Mom's dad was Peter Pan the Magic Man, the official magician for the city of New York. And my grandpa would wake up every day and say, better and better every day. You know, he was the most confident. He believed in the power of self, actualization. I mean, he was way ahead of his time, and he believed in my mom. And So I think that's why she had that energy and that focus more than a generational reason.
So, so some of her testimony, and it's really, it's actually very relevant that she's saying some of the things that she said almost 30 years ago. And so to the House committee, she said, you know, and this is just part of it. On an escalator in Atlanta, this lady comes up to me and says, I want to thank you at PBS for helping to keep our kids for just a little while longer. PBS is working with great energy, devoting 1/3 of their programming time to producing shows that are thoroughly innocent, totally wholesome, and at the same time stimulating and vigorous. Since the Children's Television Act was passed, some broadcasters have claimed that everything educates. What has been mentioned when broadcasters claim that G.I. Joe is enriching, they do not do so with a straight face. However, for decades, they have been pulling the wool over nobody's eyes and getting away with it. And then she goes on to say, I am hoping for more diversity. I am not for banning anything.
Well, in terms of diversity, just to talk about it in the context that we use that term now, Lambchop's Play Along, from the very beginning, before it was cool to have a diverse cast, had a diverse cast. We were the first kids show that had, on Charlie Earth's Music Pizza, a character who was disabled. Not a puppet character, but an actual, one of the kids was in a wheelchair. Being a Jew in the 50s, much similar, unfortunately, to what's going on now. Being a Jew in the 50s meant that you were other. And so Mom was very sensitive to other, and she didn't care what, all you had to do was be excellent. You could be purple and excellent, and it would be fine with her. You could be, 7 feet tall, 2 feet tall, fat, skinny, pimpled face, whatever, nothing mattered as long as you were excellent and your best self.
So just interrupting this whole track of what she was saying to the congressional committee, you working with her and the pizza show and the young disabled child, how did she interact with those kids, and how did they interact with her?
Actually, it was no big deal. I mean, what we did was we didn't deal with it because it doesn't matter if you're in a wheelchair. It doesn't matter if you're gay. Like those are the least interesting things about a person. So only in one episode, we had a parade going on, and this is a lot of years ago, so I'm blanking on names and episode numbers. There was a parade going on, and this little girl wanted to be in the parade, but was bummed because she couldn't be in a marching band. Well, so the point was, of course you can be in a marching band your way. So we had someone pushing her, and I don't remember whether she played the cymbals or what it was, but that was the only time that we dealt with the fact that she was disabled, because it was unimportant. And it is unimportant. And we were a little terrified because puppet sets are raised. It's much more comfortable to be a puppeteer standing and going like this with your hand than it is to be laying on the floor trying to fit underneath something. So we had these big pits, puppet pits, where the puppeteers, you got a little kid in a wheelchair, 6 feet off the floor, you can't have railings. So there was a little bit of some scary that, we were like, but nothing bad happened. So it's okay, because being a Jewish mother, my mother was very careful.
And that was 30 years ago. And so one other question, I guess, is all of these young people who were in this later version of Shari and Lambchop and Charlie Horse, are you still in touch with them?
I am in touch with some of them. One, Andrew Francis, he was the most lovely little boy. First season Charlie Horse Lambchop's Play Along, I was casting, and he was there with his 3-year-old brother. He was 6. And this kid was like, boom, like you knew the minute he walked in the room, you got the job. Little brother was very shy, and he was so kind. He spent the entire audition turning his little brother toward us, trying to support his little brother. It's still like just the kindness. And Chance Perry, who played Takeout, the big orangutan on Charlie Earth's Music Pizza, we're
Mhm.
still in touch. So a couple of them I'll tag in and out, but the whole crew and I are still very good friends. I mean, really good friends. So
That's great.
that's lovely.
That those workforce, those, workplace relationships are so important. And that was part of the secret sauce to
Well, we were there for 10
the
years in
extra.
Canada. So, I dated a couple of them and, I was 28 and single. And when mom passed, Sean Williamson, who was my producing partner on Charlie Horse, they had to shut the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Company, down for a Friday because 60 people who had been on our crew said, we're going to the memorial.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it was just, I
Yeah.
love my Canadians.
A lot of good work. It takes place in Vancouver and Toronto. Okay,
Yes.
moving on to more of what Shari testified about. And again, viewers and listeners, what we're trying to do is not talk about the book chapter by chapter, because read the book, because it's in Mallory's voice, but it's also in Shari's voice. And it really gets you to
And
understand.
Lambchop.
Exactly. Yes, there's all three of them in and out. But back to 1993, and then she's kind of following up, and she's kind of sticking it to these guys. And she says, by the way, I don't entirely agree with what you said about it being a clear demarcation between education and entertainment. Children learn best through play, and I believe you have to find a way always to make it entertaining for the children, thoroughly entertaining, or they will use the dial. I do believe that has to be the focus, but the commitment to accept the challenge, the very real challenge, should be at the heart of the industry and the basis for broadcast renewal. If all broadcasters were regulated so they had to provide good stuff equally, perhaps there would be a race for quality, just as there is now a race for market share.
Yes. Well, mom was one of the early coiners of the term edutainment. But my grandfather used magic to teach boys math at the Yeshiva University. So the force is strong in our family on this particular subject.
It was such an important time, 1993, cable was definitely happening, but we hadn't gotten to streaming, and the conglomerates, all of the mergers that happened that then became the owners of the rights of what had been and were in charge of creating the content for the future, just changed the game entirely. So, I'm thinking too about the fact that your mother really was a woman in a man's game. And you talk about that in and out. You write about that in the book. How did she do things differently? Were you able to sort of glean how she managed her career different from those of her colleagues or other men you knew of in the business?
Well, mom ran the office and the production company out of the house. And so our downstairs family room was the production meeting room, also the rehearsal studio. My dad's office in the back became the edit suite. The writer's room worked out of the garage. And mom's, she's the CEO in charge of everything. Her bedroom was her office, and she would sit on her bed and with the papers, file folders spread out on this queen size bed. And then in the other bedroom, there was a staff of 4 because she kept 4 people busy at all times. She had a little tape recorder and she would dictate, Richard, as soon as you hear my voice. Finally, poor Richard went slamming into her bedroom one day and said, Shari, I cannot do everything as soon as I hear your voice. I go, you have got to stop doing that. And Georgia, our housekeeper, was craft services. So I don't think many men ran their business out of their home, but that way it was all about what she had to balance. She had to balance being a wife. She had dinner on the table at 6 o'clock every day. Did she cook it? No. Did she sit down with Georgia at the beginning of every week and go over the menu for the week? Yes. My dad always had clean clothes and a spotless house. Did she clean or spot? No. But she worked with Teresa to make sure that Teresa knew what priorities were. Well, that's what it's like to be a CEO/wife. I was always driven to all of my appointments. And did she drive me? No, I had a nanny who drove me. But has anyone in my life ever said to me, oh, was it hard having a working father? Nobody's ever said that. Now, why in every interview or most interviews, I get asked, was it hard having your mom work? Why would that be hard? I had I got more attention from my working mother than I did from my working father. So I feel that I think running it out of the house actually made it easier for mom to balance that. And, being a woman, my dad would get up in the morning, take a shower, go to the work, come home. Maybe he'd shave. Now, that's not how it works if you're an entertaining female. You get up in the morning, you got to figure out, when's my Botox appointment? I got to get my hair done. I got to get my lashes. There is a lot more to being a woman than there is to being a man in terms of the daily preparation. I read an interesting article. Someone said that they believe that men, at least in the initial stages of dating, should pay for the date. And I happen to agree, because that man did not go get his hair done, did not lay out $50 for a new manicure. It's just more expensive to meet the expectations of being female. And if you look at the pay gap, add that in, you're buying my dinner.
Yeah, that's right.
And paying for my Uber. Thank you. So luckily I'm married now, so I don't have to worry about that. My husband takes very good care of me. But yeah, so, with working from home, again, mom would lay on her back while Nancy put on her individual eyelashes ahead of the game while listening to songs that she had to memorize. So she didn't drive on purpose. A lot of wasted time driving places.
Right.
People came to her.
And the experience you had being able to see all that, because that's where you lived, was an understanding of delegation and relationships, professional relationships. And that's invaluable.
Really good at delegation.
Yeah, right. So would you say then that with the 2022 lens, she really was a feminist, whether she believed it or not?
She knew she was a feminist. She just didn't burn her bra because she had very large breasts and needed her bra. But she brooked no nonsense from anyone. One day, one of the directors, who mom was not fond of, we were sitting looking at the schematics on the studio floor. And he goes, "Where's the power here? Where's the power?" Now he meant the electrical plug. "Where's the power?" And mom goes, "Right here, buddy, right here." So she was definitely a feminist. She just wasn't, she was too busy to whine about it.
Yeah. And it was before, I think to some degree, it was the snapback of the progress that had been made by so many women in entertainment.
Things
hadn't
were looking
really
up.
been felt
Things
yet.
were looking up then.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit then about when your mother passed away and what happened, what was going on in the last year and a half of her life with regard to the business and what she ended up doing, and how that impacted the fact that you just didn't watch Shari in reruns, even though she had passed away, which was kind of something I was hoping.
Yeah, it never made sense to me. My mom spent a lot of time trying to make my father feel good about himself also, because, if you're a very powerful woman, you kind of got to prop up the guys. And so he was in charge of overseeing some of the more male parts, the business parts, neglected to get either the trademark or the copyright on Lambchop renewed. That cost the family, I don't know, $10-20 million. And he wanted her to retire, and she didn't want to. So in order to get the funding for Charlie Horse Music Pizza, she had to essentially sell the rights to the puppets. Now that was fine because she retained the rights for as long as she was alive. Unfortunately, that was only about 16 months. Right. So That's why Lambchop's not back on the air. I have been touring, performing live with Lambchop for
A very long time. Hello there, it's lovely to see you. And Mallory hasn't done a television show because the rights were kind of murky. But they're not as murky anymore. Hello, I see you got your doll too.
two grown red-haired women playing with Lambchop. This is my interview. Go sit down.
Hi.
Um, so yeah, you know, it was unfortunate. They say depression is living in the past, anxiety is living in the future, and contentment is living in the present. So there you have it. That's what I say to myself at 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm anxious.
And certainly it was, there were all sorts of people involved in trying to do the right thing, and it didn't work out. The sale of Shari Lewis Enterprises to Golden Books then, I mean, is there any way you can get to?
Yeah,
it's just sitting on a shelf?
I can't say anymore because
Okay.
things are in process.
Got it. Okay, so it's
There's hope. Hope springs eternal.
it's complicated, certainly. I mean, it's the reason why we can't watch Murphy Brown, because it's complicated. Contracts.
I'm very
and
lucky
rights.
because I have a very, very, very good lawyer who was on my mom's show when he was a little boy, and back in the 50s or 60s. And so I get the family discount, which is, it's so kind because he's really aces, and I certainly couldn't afford him.
Well, I mean, he is going after, you know,
Steve, we love you, Steve.
he's going after something that is incredibly meaningful and valuable, and if, you know, if a contract can get written, it can get rewritten and it can get bought out. And I wish you guys all the best in whatever you're trying to pursue, because the world needs more of what your mother created, and even what you're creating now based on all of that good work. And so let's talk for a little bit about when you decided to pick up Lambchop and bring her back and take her out.
I spent the first year after mom passed, I was pregnant, and I spent the first year accepting posthumous awards for mom. Finally, my ex-husband quite intelligently said, you know, we can't actually make a living with you accepting posthumous awards. Do you want to do this? And so I went to an event that Pat Proft and his wife Karen had sponsored, charity event Pat wrote all the Police Academy movies in Wisconsin and someplace cold. And mom had gotten the award the year before, and they wanted to honor her posthumously this year. So I went, and I didn't know if I was going to do it or not. I tucked Lambchop in the podium, and when they called her name, I went up, stuck my hand in her, pulled her up, and she said, Shari would be so proud. Now, if it had been a script, it would have said, Lambchop, quote, Shari would be so proud. Beat, gasp, wild applause. Mm-hmm. So, and I thought, oh, I can do that. Now, mind you, I was just still accepting awards. And some guy called me from, I don't remember the name of the theater, and said, I've been following your career. I'd love you to come and do a Christmas show. I'm thinking, what career is he talking about? I said, well, give me till Monday, because this was maybe May. And I knew I could do Lambchop. I didn't have an act. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, so, but I thought I could do this. And so I said yes. And then I did 2-minute shows, and then 3-minute shows, and then 6-minute shows. Luckily, the LA Zoo was very kind and gave me opportunities for those. And I started performing at the Magic Castle in Los Angeles, and all of the old magicians would come over after the show, and they'd say, Carlin, you did really well, but when you look at the audience, take a beat, or, you know, at the end of your act, move your hands up. That'll get them on their feet. I mean, like, I got real stagecraft from these guys. Yeah. And then I started touring and doing fairs, and now I do only performing arts centers. And I do a legacy show, and it's really fun because about half the show is me and Lambchop and Hush Puppy singing and performing, and the other half is me curating stories about mom. And I always say to the audience at the beginning, I know you wish you could have bought a ticket to Shari Lewis and Lambchop. I do too, but
Mhm.
I'm okay with that. And you're going to have a great time, I promise you. And whichever Shari you remember, whether it's the ponytails, the curls, the shag, the bob, the ponytail with the curls, whichever is your Shari, you're going to see her on this show. And my audiences are 80% adults. So
Mhm.
now it's like 6 members of the family and little Susie. And they're all like, oh, we wanted to bring little Susie to the show. I'm like, it takes 7 of you? Does she spit pea soup? Come on, you're here because you wanted to be there. And
Mhm.
then I say I have the best job in the world. I fly someplace. They put me up at a decent hotel, get to go to a performing arts center where highly talented tech guys make me sound and look better than I actually do. I get to sing, I get to dance, people clap for me. Afterwards, 1,000 people wait in line to hug me and hug Lambchop, tell me how proud my mother would be of me, and then someone hands me a check. Now, mind you, I haven't done this in 2 years because some people wouldn't wear masks and
Right.
get shots. So that kind of keeps the old people and the little children home.
Sure.
But I have my first gig coming back at the in Hardwick, Massachusetts, December 3rd. And I'm so excited. I miss the happy sound. And actually just started rehearsing for it this morning. I still remember the act mostly. And so, yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
And so in your act is Lambchop a 2022 Lambchop where
Yes,
she
she is. Well, she is always 6. She is
Yes.
always Lambchop, but she's running for president. And she's got some pretty funny things to say about that. She's an influencer. And she actually is. We hit number 7 on Twitter. I had nothing to do with it, but I woke up one morning and all my friends are texting me, you got to see you got to see what's happening with Lambchop on Twitter. And I thought, what did I tweet last night that I'm not remembering? But some random guy named Kurt Fry had tweeted something about Lambchop and it hit number 7. And my TikTok, I'm loving doing TikTok. It's at your fave Lambchop, at your FAV Lambchop. We're like, one of my last TikToks hit over 300,000. So Lambchop's very much enjoying being an influencer. So it's a combination of, one of the reasons Lambchop has endured is she's such a great character. And so I always stay within the character, but
Mhm.
she is obviously a different 6-year-old now than she would be a 6-year-old 60 years ago. And mom always pushed the edge with Lambchop also. I mean, she had this great drunk routine, which I do not do at this particular show, but I once was performing it at a nightclub and someone comes up to me and goes, your mother would be horrified about that routine. I go, madam, my mother wrote that routine. But people say to me, oh, Lambchop, sure is more current than she was with your mom. And I say, well, first of all, let's cut mom some slack. She's been dead 24 years. I go, and also I wrote for Lambchop then, and I write for her now. So if mom's hand had still been doing the work, she'd be this current.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We were big fans of Lambchop in the Haunted Studio.
Thank
We
you.
had it on VHS, and then I had at one point a VHS to DVD converter, and so we still have it. It's it's really kind of muddy and grainy and everything. But
I have a copy of it. If you send me a direct email, it may take me a little while, but I will be able to send it to you because I have a clean copy. So I can get your Haunted Studio fix.
Well, I have a 6-month-old grandson who will probably need to
Excellent.
start watching it in about a year or so.
Okay, so I've got a little time, but
yes, right.
We'll communicate off book on this.
Yes, and of course, when you're rolling through Minneapolis, and our daughter's in New York, so we're all over right now. All right, so
I will be at the Grand Theater in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is
okay.
Now, the reason I say that is because you can't get to Oshkosh directly, but I can get there through Minneapolis. I think next spring, but I'm not sure.
We'll work on that then.
Okay.
I almost dropped something here. Okay, so It sounds like Lambchop is loving the 21st century in her own way with her sister by her side. And I think, you probably are approaching this business with some of the limitations that certainly came about when your mother's life ended and her career ended. But you grew up in the shadow of a businesswoman. And so what do you think were her secrets to success and the longevity?
She was the
You
hardest
said
working person on the planet. The documentary director, Lisa Doppolito, who did the Love Gilda documentary, she said the hardest thing about doing this documentary was getting anyone to say any sentence other than, oh my God, Shari was so hardworking. Shari was so focused. I mean, there's no scandal. Like Lisa's like, I'll protect your mom's, image, but, is there anything I need to look out for? I'm like, no, she just didn't do bad things. She didn't drink. She'd have an occasional glass of wine, but she wasn't a drinker. She didn't do drugs. She worked out all the time. I mean, she just was very focused. She did not take her eye off the ball.
So if she was going to do a TED Talk, it would be all about focus.
All
Is that
about
what you think?
all about focus, all about, my grandpa used to say, the day begins the night before. And that means if you have, like, for instance, I had a very busy day today. You're number 3 out of 4 Zooms on a variety of subjects and projects. And I had a lot of housekeeping stuff I had to do. I had to reach out to the place that we're having a vacation to find out what kind of plugs we're using, just silly stuff. Insurance. Yep. But I had a good 3 hours of that. I went to bed at 8:00 last night because I knew that if I was going to get my workout in, I was going to have to be up at 5. And now, am I an eighth as disciplined as my mother? No. Am I likely to go to bed early tonight? No, I'm just getting my hair done in the morning. But Mom was, so the day begins the night before. Prepare for your next day. Lay out your clothes. Am I packed for a vacation that's 3 weeks away? Yes, but that's just because I can't wait to go sailing.
Right. Half the vacation is planning for the vacation.
Planning for the vacation. And this is a Rubik's Cube of packing because I'm coming from Boston to go to Tortola on a sailboat, which I can only have a carry-on, but then I'm going to my best friends in Florida for 2 weeks. So I have to ship clothes to her. So this is the delicious Rubik's Cube of packing.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
I'm dreading using bar shampoo and conditioner, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say that, she would impart, what kind of wisdom would she impart about working, being a leader of a team? And because she led this business.
She did lead the team. I have a very different leadership style than my mom. I lead we both lead from the front though. It's the traditional old general sits back and sends the young man out to die. Mom and I we were the first person on the set. She was less interpersonal, except with a very small group of people, but she was also, I'm just a different person than my mother. That's, I deal with an audience differently. Mom did a perfect show that you were invited to watch. I do a slightly less perfect show, but you're a part of it. So, we're different people. I'm taller also.
And you talked a little bit early on about how she felt that part of the success of her longevity was the fact that she knew she would have to change.
Yes.
Talk a little bit more about that, either in terms of what you remember, or not just the change of her hair, which certainly happened over time.
Yes, mine has not, unfortunately. Well, there was a color shift, but that's it. She was one of the most famous people on television in the 50s, early 60s. Now, mind you, there were 3 channels. So there was a 1/3 chance if someone was watching, they were watching her. But she was, and then it ended because cartoons came on. And so then she said, okay, they don't want me to do that. I'm going to write books. I'm going to conduct orchestras. I'm going to tour. I'm going to be in Vegas. And that went on. And she always kept trying to get back on TV. But every time a door closed, she kicked down a wall. And finally, she was able to take down the wall of, no, Shari, you can't have a TV show. So
that's amazing. And it's inspiring. I mean, that should be what everybody thinks about, particularly women, when they are told no, or they try. Maybe that just isn't the right approach. You know, maybe she was never really intended to conduct orchestras for the rest of her life, or
she was very happy to go back to mom. All she ever wanted was her own TV show. So I'm very, I'm so happy that she only had 6 weeks from her last moments performing to her passing.
Mm-hmm.
If she had had her way, she would have stepped off the stage and died. And if I could have given her that gift, I would have, because her whole life was about being Shari Lewis.
Yeah. That is, I remember those 6 weeks. I remember.
Yeah.
And so listeners, from the perspective of how I remember, it was because our daughter was 3-ish, 4-ish, and was just a huge Lambchop fan. And already at the dining room table, my kids knew at 3 and 5, give or take, that I had written a letter to General Mills complaining about the fact that all of the cereal mascots were men. Or there was like the bumblebee on Honey Nut Cheerios, you maybe could say didn't have a gender. But yeah, gender neutral. But otherwise, all the mascots were men. And I got this, sort of very non-committal. Yeah, I just got a letter back, and I was so mad, and I explained it to them at the dining room table. And so then the news happened about Shari, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to tell Allison at some point. And fortunately, in the life of a 4-year-old, there's enough busy stuff going on that we were able to just say she's not on TV anymore. But we scooped up as many VHSs as we could, and we watched them and sang the songs. And
you realize my mind is now thinking, what kind of cereal would mom be? It wouldn't have sugar in it, though. It would be healthy.
Right. It's and kids are eating different things for breakfast these days. So, it would be I don't know.
Mom would be a bento box, and she would have a QR code that you could scan where the kids could watch a video to how to fill their own bento box, make your breakfast,
Right. And then something to watch while they're eating too. Yes.
Yes.
Does Lambchop have her own phone, by the way?
No, she does. She's only 6. It's
I don't know.
Yeah,
do 6-year-olds have phones?
I'm afraid of what she would encounter on the internet.
Has she ever asked you for a phone? Do you have that conversation?
Oh, okay. No.
Does she play with your iPad?
No, she is pretty much, she loves it when I make TikToks with her, but she hasn't asked for her own phone. She shares my email. So, I'll read her some of the emails.
Great. Wow. This is just
but now I'm feeling like I've done lamb abuse by not getting her own phone. So it's now on, does Lambchop need a phone, and what kind of cereal would my mother be? Thank you for this.
I think the audiences are going to really chime in, because parenting is very different than when you and I were raising kids.
Yes.
So the book
we had
is
to walk uphill in the snow both ways to school.
Well, in Minneapolis, we actually did, but
there wasn't much of that.
We didn't really have a snow day either. It was pretty hardcore. So the book published by the University of Kentucky Press, is it officially out and available?
Oh yeah, you can get it on Amazon. Shari Lewis and Lambchop, the team that changed children's television. My favorite part of the book is my mom didn't really cook, but she loved lamb. I like to eat lamb, and she had a few recipes she did. And at the back of the book are all of mom's lamb recipes from her little, 3x5 card catalog of recipes. So you can eat your way through mom's repertoire.
And when I think about this, when I was reading this book, and it's, it's published for media studies students or for people who are, just trying to understand the entertainment business, as well as a memoir or a biography
And
of
women's
a
studies, I think,
woman,
would be
women's
very-
studies. But it strikes me that also, as you say, your audiences are overwhelmingly adult, and that
Yes.
maybe there are, if listeners, you are looking for that gift for your grandma or the aunt
I
or
like
the
to say-
uncle.
or
The,
for
the uncle probably thought Shari was hot, so go for it.
yes, or for your millennial, because mom was on TV. If you are 28 or older, you watched Mom. 28 to dead,
Mhm.
maybe 30 to dead. You have a good memory of it. So, and it's a quick read. I mean, it's not a tome. Yeah, but I think it is a great gift for grandma, for mom,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
anyone in your life.
So, it's available on Amazon. It's probably available at the University of Kentucky Press website, because they're an entire clearinghouse of these sorts of books that also deal in other areas, and they
And if
do
you can
good work.
find a bookstore, it may even be in there.
Go to your independent bookstore and ask for it. You know what?
Yes.
Because when you ask for it, then that opens doors, and it you get that kind of service from an independent. Although I think at Barnes and Noble, even in places like that, they are willing to accept
order.
those. Yeah. So, you are doing your best, if you're going to go to a brick and mortar store, to keep that tradition alive and make sure that there's always a bookstore available in your town. So that's important. So Mallory Lewis, tell us, how do we learn more about you and where you're going to be and all of that?
My website is MalloryLewisandLambchop.com. And my Twitter, I don't even really know my Twitter handle. That one, I find Twitter a bit too incendiary for me after 5 o'clock. And so my Facebook is an open page, Mallory Lewis. You can tell it's me because there's a picture of me with my puppet. But mostly TikTok, at your fave lamb chop. Please like and follow.
All right. And we will include all of these links in the show notes. And as we're doing other promotions, some of this stuff will happen. So I am not on TikTok yet. Just trying to really sort out where a podcast needs to be. Hey. All
She's
right.
a super little feminist, but I love TikTok, and I can often waste an entire Saturday.
Well, we are certainly learning that life is short. And speaking of that, I did ask you, and as we were working on this outline and everything, do you have the rights to the song that does not end? Can we sing that?
Well,
Because I kind of
all
have
I
to
can
have the
say is,
permission.
This is a song that doesn't
Does it end?
Yes, it goes on and on, my friend. Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever just because this is not.
I can't think of a better way to close out this conversation other than to say, you know what, listeners, this is why I podcast. Sign up for our e-newsletter at either tvherstory.com or my website, cynthiabemisabrams.com. Newsletter comes out. I'm not selling you anything. You have not listened to any advertisement in this episode or any others. You won't find us on Amazon podcasts because I won't support that. This is me pulling the best stories out of some of the best people and finding those stories as well. I am on
rock star. You're a rock star. I follow your podcast, and I asked them to reach out to you specifically.
Thank you.
So you've got a fan in me.
And in me.
We are on Twitter and Instagram as much as we can be. Kind of coming back because this was a summer where I moved from Chicago back to Minneapolis. And so this has been excellent. Thank you, Mallory, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for writing the book, for having that come to moment with Nat that said, why didn't we do this? And I hope that you only continue to get the love that is out there, both for your mom and for your sister, that you are carrying that message to the next generation.
Thank you so much.